the Agile group, okay, so it's a community that's been created to build a network of Agile professionals with a military mindset. So everyone in the group is a veteran or is currently a service leaver or in resettlement phase, looking to gain experience and knowledge within the Agile space. How are we going to do that? We're going to do that by guiding, educating and supporting. There's no CV advice. There's none of that sort of stuff unless you want to get into an Agile role, then we can assist, but we're not pushing that sort of stuff. Start off with giving a big shout out to Wayne from Millscrum, excellent support for this group, and he hosts all the virtual events as well. So there's a lot of work that he does behind the scenes. So a big shout out to Millscrum, and he's got his hat on to rep that as well. Nice look there, buddy. So with the guest sessions, as it is, you just come back from the gym as well.
Nope.
So why are we doing the guest sessions then? So what we're looking at these guest sessions is to get experienced veterans that are in the Agile industry and in the Agile space to share their insights, their experiences and the stories from their journeys. Again, we can learn so much from their experiences and the mistakes that they've made. So, you know, again, it's that sort of empirical view of the Agile space is why aren't we learning from their experiences to ensure that we don't make the same mistakes, or we can improve from what they did. So that's the value of what the guest sessions are. We've also got the virtual coffee chats that are held every 2 weeks after the guest sessions, just to share any questions, thoughts, talk through certain topics. Take the opportunity to ask questions throughout this, gain a better understanding, and most importantly, build your network as well throughout these sessions. I'll pop Matt's LinkedIn link into the Q&A part, but I'm pretty sure that you're all connected to Matt anyway. Okay, so that's a quick intro to Agile Group, quick intro to guest sessions, and what we're trying to achieve from these. So Matt, do you want to start us off by giving a quick intro into you?
Yes, yeah, thanks mate. Thanks Jake, thanks Wayne, and thanks everyone for taking the time and effort to join the call. Hey Dougie, nice to see you, albeit as a big D as opposed to your actual face. Been a while mate. So first of all, thanks for the opportunity. I've been asked to come on and have a little chat and talk about my role as an Agile coach, okay, and then my journey from where I served while I was in the army. I served for 23 years to where I am now, which is working as a contractor on a defence with a defence organisation, and kind of the journey I took to get there and what that looks like. And then, as I say, I put 2 or 3 slides together just to talk through that, and then I guess over to you, Jake, to ask as many questions as you like. And then please, with regards to what Jake said about the connection and the network, it's arguably the most important thing about your resettlement is how you weaponize your network, okay, to get opportunities, in learning, in training, in jobs. There's a huge amount of people out there who are willing to help you out, even people you've either served with and or even people you've never met before and you meet through groups like this. So that leveraging a network is something that was told to me when I started resettling. I didn't really believe it. I didn't really think that was a thing until I went through my resettlement journey, and even to where I am now, where the network continues to support him. I'll just share my screen. I've just got a few slides, not many. Let me just see if this will work. Please, can you confirm that you can see my screen? Thumbs up or a virtual thumbs up if you haven't got your camera on. Lovely job. Perfect, thanks Sam. Okay, so my name is Matt Spruce. I served for 23 years, okay, and I was in the Royal Army Medical Corps. I joined at 16 years old in 1998. I went to school and grew up in North Wales, in Rhyl, and then, as I say, decided to join the army at 16, not really knowing what I wanted to do, just knowing I wanted to be in the army. And because I was quite interested in being a physiotherapist, which the careers guy in Rhyl kind of steered me into this medical space, said the words combat medical technician. They were the 3 coolest words I'd heard as a 16-year-old from North Wales. So I ended up joining the Med Corps. Fast forward about 14 months, and then I was 17 and 10 months in Kosovo. I had my 18th birthday in Kosovo as a medic, thinking, what the fucking hell have I done here? Okay, and then I ended up staying in the Corps for 23 years. I commissioned I finished my time as a soldier as the RSM down at 33 Field Hospital, and I commissioned and then did a number of roles from RCMO training officer, an SO3 job, and then I finished my time as an adjutant. The reason I sort of sell that is I spent 23 years in the Med Corps. Okay, during that time in the Med Corps, we specialise in working in the pre-hospital emergency care space. You also then look at those 7 capabilities of care. We work in the hospital space, in the training space, always around med. I'm now an Agile coach working in defence for an organisation that makes missiles. Okay, so just because your career is one thing in one role, whether you're signals or REME or infantry or whatever, it doesn't mean that that's the natural step into where you're going to work. And don't feel that, you know, you're stovepiped into that area because that's the space you've worked in. You know, there are so many transferable skills that we pick up at all ranks as we go through the ranks in the army, whether you spend a full career, 22, 23 years, or even if you spend 4, 5 years, 10 years, whatever you spend, you pick up a lot of transferable skills. Now, I made the decision to work in the Agile space. It's something that I had an insight into because my older brother had been doing it for a long time, and I didn't really understand it when he would talk about things. But as I progressed up the ranks, and then you fall yourself into like this natural project manager. You're no longer doing your job where you're managing things. You'll get given tasks to do, and every task is then a project. I found myself working in Hereford, and I had the opportunity and the task to rewrite a training program. How do we make it credible? How do we make it credible? How do we get it accredited? And I wanted to approach it in a different way. So I started using Agile methodology. I've done some of the courses in my own time. So I thought I'm going to try and use them in the space I'm working now. Okay. And essentially, I worked as an Agile evangelist in a relatively non-Agile organization for about 5 or 6 years before making the decision to leave and think to see if I could cut my teeth as an Agile coach or as a Scrum Master outside the military. Now, when I left the military, I had no guarantee of a job, had no guarantee of anything really, but I did the usual resettlement in the sense that I did the one day that you're mandated to do. But over sort of the last 5 or 6 years of my career, I was doing little bits. I was investing my own time, using different little pots of money that are available to you to go and do these courses. And I did things like my Scrum Master course, my product ownership course. I looked at what facilitation was used in the industry. So that was better set up for leaving. But there was no jobs, you know, and that was the biggest, scariest thing. I had a family, I had young children, and there was no guarantee of paying a mortgage. Now, people who leave the military in normal time, I see are massively brave people. You know, I was fortunate enough to have served 22 years. So I had a military pension, and I take nothing away from the fact that I knew I had some level of security and some level of a safety blanket in finance by the fact that I've got a pension. But there are no jobs out there. So I got the opportunity to work for a company called Capgemini. Now, they are a huge consultancy. They employ over 330,000 people globally. And I worked as an Agile coach within financial services. The reason I've got the slide up now is they're the organizations that I've worked with as an Agile coach since leaving the military. Okay, so within Capgemini, I worked in financial services, working with HSBC, with Metro Bank, with Barclaycard. I've also done some private work with the University of Kent, again back into the Ministry of Defence and London Energy, and now I currently work with MBDA Missile Systems. All of these organizations on the screen adopt Agile ways of working. All of these organizations on the screen, even the Ministry of Defence, employ Agile civilians to do stuff, Scrum Masters, product owners, okay, Agile coaches. Although it's not something that we uniquely hear about, and if you go through the settlement process, you hear about things like project manager, and you think that's what I'm going to do. I'm a sergeant, I'm a captain or whatever. I'm going to leave the military, be a project manager, and I'm going to do Prince 2, and I'm going to get a job managing projects. But we don't really know where we can do that job. You know, the other one is NEBOSH and health and safety. You think I'm going to do the health and safety stuff, and I'm going to work in health and safety, whatever that looks like, because I've got this experience in the G4 space. There are so many organizations out there who are employing in all different roles in the Agile space, okay? And there are so many opportunities with organizations that you may never have heard of, okay? So it isn't just looking for these big organizations. Capgemini as a consultancy was exceptional. They were a huge consultancy with lots of different opportunities. They had a really strong ex-military footprint within the organization, as well as lots of these other organizations. And there was a nice network within there of people who were either reservists or they were veterans, where you could tap into to have that level of banter and connection. And I've thoroughly enjoyed my time at Capgemini. I made the step probably about a year ago to go independent as a consultant, because I thought there was more opportunities out there, and I'm, as I say, enjoying working in that space, currently on a contract with MBDA, coaching a number of teams to get better and deliver stuff quicker and more efficiently. Okay, as I said earlier on, MBDA are an organization which makes missiles, and what I know about missiles or engineering or physics, okay, you could write on one of my thumbs, but the process and how we manage teams and how we facilitate events and how we speak to people and communicate, that's our strength. Certainly within the military, we have this, we forget about our abilities in leadership. And there is a huge gap within industry in leadership at all levels, whether you're a corporal and you're used to managing 5 or 6 people, or whether you've been an OC of a squadron responsible for over 100 people, admin, welfare, discipline, and everything else. Okay, there are huge areas that are deficient in industry and leadership, and that's where I think a lot of people ex-military can really shine. What does an agile coach look like? So I've done a number of courses over the years. There are a few other various things that can be added to this, but one of the things I would say is it's important that you learn your craft. So depending on where you want to work and what type of industry you want to work in, if it's project management, great. Don't hang your hat on Prince 2. Okay, so do Prince 2. By all accounts, it's a really decent base level qualification, recognized globally. Okay, but then think of what else you can do that will make you a good project manager. In the agile space, we hear about Scrum Mastery. We hear about working as a Scrum Master. We don't really know what it means, but we say, hey, cool, it's a 2-day course and it gives me a certification. I'm all in for that. Where do I sign? Okay, now you're absolutely right. Doing a 2-day course will qualify you and certify you as a Scrum Master, whether you go through the Scrum Alliance or scrum.org. But it's understanding what that role is, what value you bring to a team. The fact that as a qualified or a certified Scrum Master, you can work in 2 teams, for 2 teams in the same organization, and your role be totally different. You can work in multiple organizations, and every single time your job is totally different. And much akin to the military, as if you're a corporal at a training establishment responsible for some stuff, you then move into regimental duty and you're completely doing different stuff altogether, and then you move to a different role and you're doing different stuff altogether. It's very much like that. And one of the bits of advice I would give is learn as much as you can and add as many tools to your toolkit as you can to make you better in that role. For me as an agile coach, and I support Scrum Masters. So for that, I need to understand exactly what Scrum Masters need. I support and coach product owners. So I need to understand what product ownership is. Okay. I train other agile coaches and train Scrum Masters. So I need to understand training. But the biggest thing working in the agile space that I've found in the last 3 years is your ability to facilitate stuff. Now, I know Dougie, who's on the call. Okay, we serve together in the REMC, and Dougie is an exceptional facilitator. They're skills that you need, the ability to get people on the same page, the ability to get people from a big bucket of ideas into something meaningful that they can do. That's a skill. Okay, it's a skill that we've got. We're used to doing planning. We're used to building models on exercise so we can visualize stuff. And it's so important to hone those skills so that you can perform in that role. Okay, and it's crazy, honestly. So I use Lego to do some stuff. I use Post-its, I use pens, I use visualization of stuff. As I said, if we go back a slide, okay, to the organizations I've worked in, I don't have a degree. I don't have a diploma in finance. I've never worked in higher education. I don't understand NEBOSH, okay? And I certainly have no engineering skills, but I've managed to work in all of those arenas delivering value because it's about the process. It's about, can we get these people on the same page to understand something? Whether that's a rebranding, an updating of a system, an updating of a process, a restructuring of something. It's about going in there thinking, how can I get these people on the same page? And we've all got this experience in the military of dealing with conflict. And I'm not talking about peer-on-peer conflict on ops. I'm talking about conflict in camp. When you're dealing with irritating junior soldiers or who've done something, and you come in on a Monday morning, they're like, Sergeant Major, this happened. And you're like, right, okay, let's deal with all of these things. And that skill set doesn't exist in Civvy Street. It just doesn't exist. Those experiences don't exist. So yeah, so that's me. Every single day for me as an Agile coach is different. Okay, and I try and bring something different to the party every time I go into work. I have a few, like your safe bet of activities that you can say, I know what I'm going to use as an icebreaker. I know what I'm going to use to try and get these people to group think this. I know what I'm going to use to prioritize this. But every time you go in, it's about how we can improve, how we can deliver a little bit better, a little bit more to ensure we're delivering value. So yes, by way of an intro, does anyone have any questions?
I'll take the lead, although you've stolen 3 of my set questions. So thanks for that, buddy.
You're welcome.
So you talked briefly there about what you do with the teams, but can you talk us through what an average day, if there is an average day, what that would look like? So you start work at, say, 8:30, 9:30, whatever time it might be, 8:30, 9:00 if you've got to travel or commute. What do you do from then?
It's a really good question. Well, no 2 days are the same, to be honest. And when you're working with bigger organizations, they're spread across multiple locations. Okay, so the requirement for you to be on site isn't the same ask depending on what industry you're working in, or some organizations. Some organizations want you to be on site 3-4 days a week, and that might be because the systems they're working on are secret, or just because, okay? Other organizations understand that they're spread over multiple locations. And because, thankfully, if there was anything good that came out of COVID, we've got this ability to work remote. We've got this, the tools are so much better. Okay, so I work from home 4 days a week. I go into the office maybe 1 day a week. Sometimes I don't go in the office 1 day a week, and I work from home, for all of it. With regards to what a day looks like, it depends on what kind of industry you're working in and where you're working. For me, I'm judged, I guess, on my outcome, not on my output. So I don't need to be logged onto my computer at 8 o'clock in the morning and wiggle the mouse around because people are checking on me. So I make sure I schedule the calls around my family. I've got 2 small children. So on a Tuesday and a Thursday, they go to nursery earlier and after school club. So I've got longer days. The other days they're in school at 9. So I'm probably logging on around 9:15. And that's an accepted thing. In the military, it isn't. Parade's at 8:30. I don't care if you've got 10 kids, you're on parade at 8:30 and you better have a good excuse. And I felt the same when I was a sergeant major, I was a sergeant. It was like, how can you possibly be late for anything? We're in the military. Whereas Civvy Street isn't like that. They appreciate the fact that, hey, yeah, you've got families. It isn't this, the wife stay at home. We're working families. Do you know what I mean? And it's so accepted these days for you to have that, I guess, flexible working or hybrid working or whatever you want to call it. And it's one of those things that when you're looking for a role within an organization, see what that looks like. Because if you get a job offer and you think, I can do that, it's only a 35-minute commute, I can do that twice a day, that will very quickly become tedious. Okay, very, very quickly. And if you're required to do that level of commute every day, it will take the fun out of the job. So you should certainly, when you're looking for roles, see what that approach is. For me, as I say, I walk 20 meters. Yeah, okay, you can judge me, but I wear Crocs. Okay, I walk 20 meters to the office, which is basically an outbuilding in the garden, and I log on and I set my own calendar. So I make sure that the sessions I'm working on are within that day. If I need to work a bit later, I book those sessions and have to do other stuff. You fit it round your day. One of the things I didn't do when I first left was look after me. I was very much the case of I would log on at 8:30. If I had nothing on, I learned some tricks, but I would have to wiggle my mouse so that the green light would stay on that I was available. Okay, I would do these little things where you'd start a PowerPoint presentation, because if you start a PowerPoint presentation, your computer doesn't lock itself. Because I had nothing to do and I had this immense imposter syndrome and guilt of, If I'm not on my computer, I'm going to get found out. And it isn't like that. Again, it's like, I mean, some organizations I imagine are like that, but I've tried to find myself in a place where I'm going to be judged on what I can deliver, not on whether I'm in work at 8, leaving at 5. And because of that, it adds that little bit of flexibility, you know. And just like when I was in the military, I now, if I'm going to go for a run, I do it in work time. I'll do it over my lunch, and I'll just book it out on my calendar. I don't even hide it. It will be, I'm running, I'm out of the office for an hour, I'm doing this. So you're totally transparent, and people get it. People appreciate that level of transparency. Okay, and what you find other people doing is private appointment, private appointment, private appointment. And you're like, so a lot of private appointments you're having at the same time every day. Is everything okay? And they're like, oh yeah, that's just when I go yoga, or it's when I do Pilates at the gym. And it's about that kind of like adult environment you work in, which we're just not used to in the military. We're just not used to it, you know?
It's actually becoming more acceptable because of the effects of physical exercise on your own well-being. So my team leader will ask me on a weekly basis if I'm still exercising, because she knows that is my stress relief. And when work is busy, she's like, make sure you get time to run, fizz, do whatever. And that is actually acceptable nowadays, which is crazy to think of, getting that time in. One thing, I'll go on, Sam, you jump in.
I was gonna, it's kind of like steering towards more like the actual work side, but when you're on about like facilitating the teams, what kind of things is it that you're doing it? Is it like you're talking to different clients? Like, are you helping them see what a priority is? Is it like how to gain finances, or like what the barriers, like what kind of things is it you're helping facilitate them with essentially?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. So I guess there's 2 levels of there's 2 stages of facilitation. One of them is remote facilitation, the other's face-to-face. So a lot of the stuff we facilitate is the organisation I currently work with, MBDA, they use Scrum as a methodology to deliver their work. So when we're doing things like the planning phase, when we're doing things like retrospectives, I will facilitate it, or I'll coach the Scrum Masters to come up with how we facilitate things better. One of the things that they do is, it doesn't fall into Scrum, but they just do it, is a thing called PI planning, which is planning for the quarter. You know, what things are we going to deliver for the clients in that quarter? And for a facilitation point of view, it's about how do you get 100 people working across 10 teams to come up with a plan? And it's about holding the room. How do you brief them? How are we doing icebreakers? How are we getting them to introduce each other? In the military, we're used to these so mundane stuff, which is okay, and you'll have all seen it when you're on a course, and it's like, stand up, tell us a bit about yourself, and you dread it. You're like, oh, okay, great, it's going to get to me, and oh, actually Sam's story was way cooler than mine. I need to come up with a cool story now just so I fit in with this group of people I've never met before. It's more about how we can get them to introduce themselves and work together and collaborate stuff. So it's about visualizing a lot of stuff, making boards, sticking post-its on walls. How do we prioritize work? How can you vote on work? How can you come to a decision? There's a thing that we talk about, and you may or may not have heard of, psychological safety. And psychological safety is this huge thing, okay? But if you just say, hey team, this is a psychologically safe space, you instantly make it a non-psychologically safe space. So it's about how you can set the room up in a way where, whether you're someone who's really senior or whether you're a graduate who's just joined the organization, how you can set it up so that their opinion can be valued, that you can still have an opinion. That might be, let's make things anonymous, or that might be, let's use some of the liberating structures like a 1, 2, 4, or. So we're breaking down how you ask questions, how you put your opinion in. And there are,
I guess it's like your soft skills in a way.
100%. This ability to communicate, the ability
I'm
to
a nerd,
brief
by the
people.
way.
No, hey, it's the ability to brief people, the ability to hold a room, the ability to, like, if you've got 100 people in a room talking about different stuff and you need to interject, how are you doing that? Because a lot of cities don't know how to do it, whereas we kind of do. Because and I'm not talking about shouting, I'm not talking about doing things, it's just different ways of going about it. You know, do you ring a bell? Do you just use your voice? Do you have a buzzer? Do you time box the sessions that they're in into clear ways? There are so many different things you can use, and there is no right or wrong answer. The biggest thing about facilitation and having an impact, from my point of view, is how you, in that role, build a relationship with the people you're working with. Because you can come in and say, hey, I'm an Agile coach and I've got all these badges and I'm great. But if you're a knob and they don't get on with you, no one's going to listen to you. Like, no one's going to listen to you. And I've seen it even in the organization I'm with now, where people who are really experienced and been doing this their whole life don't get a look in. They don't get invited to calls. It is a brutal area if you're a dickhead, because people don't want you in the space. And whereas you can turn up, and that's one of the things that we're quite good at in the military, is because of, you might be in a posting where you get all your mates and you love your job and you love everything, you promote and move to another area and you've got to learn it all again. You've got to learn the people again. You've got to learn where you fit. We're almost like coached into being able to work in different teams. And when you go into industry, that's one of the skills that it makes a massive difference, because we just take everyone at face value until they prove otherwise. Someone's got a hand up. Terry, is it?
Yeah, I think Wayne had his hand up first. I think he wants to show us a book.
What book we going for?
I showed you the one you gave me, Matt. That's the Facilitators Cookbook.
Oh,
I'll put a link
yeah.
in the chat. It's a really good book for, you can tailor some of them for online, but also offline. Some really good tips in there. So have a look at that one. I've got a question, Matt. A very funny one, hopefully. What did the military medic turned Agile coach say to the team during their first retrospective?
I don't know. What did the military medic say in his first retrospective?
All right, troops, time to heal those wounds from the last sprint and strategize for the next battle against the backlog.
Made me feel sick.
No, all right, I'll move on.
Can we ban him from the call, Jake?
He's hosting it, so if he
right,
does,
okay.
we're just
Thanks,
going
Terry.
to have to get
Terry,
stuck
give me a
with those
clap.
jokes, aren't we? Because I think there's more like as well.
Serious question though, Matt. Obviously, as a medic, you were dealing with some really stressful situations at certain times in your career, no doubt. I can see there's obviously people that are ex-medical corps, RAMC on the call as well. What kind of techniques did you use from that experience when you're having to deal with those high pressure situations to prioritize your current backlog of work, or teach people to prioritize the backlog of work? Is there any lessons that you could share with the group?
I think, yeah, it's a really good question, actually. I think as a medic, and again, if you've ever worked with medics, I appreciate that some of you at med regis and stuff, if you're a medic or you're working as a company medic or you're out on the ground or whatever, you are the medic. And I think one of the things is this ability to prioritize starts at our lowest level of training, because you'll triage patients, and that your ability to use the kit you have to do the most for the most people, prioritize people, so you're, if you want, delivering more value, not just treating the first person you come to, using all of your kit, to then not being able to deliver anything to other kit. And I think that's the key, is about how do you deliver the most value. And when it gets stressful in work, I don't sit back and think, oh, it's okay, troops, no one's going to die or anything. First of all, I don't use the word troops, okay, because again, a little bit of me dies. I also don't use the word fella, because again, a little bit of me dies. But what I talk about is, if people are getting a bit of map shock with the amount of stuff, and very much that if everything's a priority, then nothing's a priority. It's working out what's going to bring the most value to the customer. And then there's a few conversations you have, because if you're not, when I talk about the customer, it's about understanding who your customer is. If you work in HR and you're developing a program or you're doing something in the HR space, your customer are the people in the organization. So what is it, of all the things you've got to do, that's going to bring the most value to the customer? And try and break it down that way. And I try and use the group. Okay, so there's a bit of group think. It's not just a question of, well, you're the highest paid person in the room, what's your priority? It's, as a group, let's create a backlog of things we think are important, and then let's vote on them so that we've got a prioritized backlog. If you're working in the Agile space, you have to be able to prioritize stuff for value. And that's, again, it's a skill set. It's a skill set to be able to have people on the same page with understanding what their priorities are. Otherwise, what you get is, certainly in the organization I'm currently working, is they're engineers and they're mega intelligent. But what they are, because they're mega intelligent and mega creative, they all see something else as a priority. So it's about, how do you get those people on the same page to sort of say, let's work out what is the most valuable thing. When we talked about facilitation, Sam, like you were talking about, if we're having a meeting or a session or whatever, I like to create a car park, okay? And a car park is a really good thing for facilitation. So there's two things that come from a car park. Is, first of all, It's stuff that gets brought up in a session that you're trying to run, which isn't relevant to the session. We're not saying it's not important, but if you're talking about I don't know, if you're talking about, early on you were talking about budget and finance, and we're talking about budget and finance and profitability with a client, and someone asks something which isn't linked to that, we don't get down a rabbit hole talking about it. We try and stick it on a car park, which is a space, so we're visualizing it, we know there's a concern there, and it's something that we can either visit at the end, or it's quite important that, so let's have another session to discuss that thing. And the other thing is about the ability to time box, because everyone's time precious, regardless of where you're going to work or where you currently work, everybody is time precious. So the importance of having an agenda and clear outcomes of what you're trying to achieve from the session is key. And then as a facilitator, if you know that the conversation or the session is going down a rabbit hole, or they're not going to achieve the outcome, it's down to you to kind of stop that, draw a line in the sand and move on to the next point. So again, we can bring the most value to the people on the call. It's also about how we set the stage. One of the things I like to say is, if you're not going to contribute, then don't bother commenting. Okay, because again, when you're in whatever organization, you've got lots of people like we have in the military who are bookends. They want to comment for the sake of commenting. They want to say something because they think it's important they're heard. They want to say something because if I say something, ask a question, it makes me look really intelligent, even though it has zero value into what the discussion is. So I kind of set a boundary, which is, if you're going to contribute, go for your life. If it's just a flippant comment, I haven't really got capacity for it. Stick it on the car park. So it's about having those kind of tools in place.
Cool. Should we go to Terry? Got your hand up, bud.
Yeah. So, question for Matt. I seem to be doing the journey that everyone else is doing in the backwards order. So I qualified as a Scrum Master, then a product owner, and I've just done my Prince 2. But I've done my Prince 2 because I was finding it really difficult to get considered for roles in sort of agile roles. And even though I work for one of the companies who you first started with, so what I can't get my head around is how you managed to sort of leave the army with maybe very little, not experience. You might have had a lot of experience in your role, but to somebody looking at you, it might not have seemed like you had commercial experience, even though you'd done your 2-day Scrum Master, which everyone knows you do more than 2 days. How did you manage to get people to take you seriously and be credible?
Terry, it's a really good question, mate. Sorry, was there another bit?
No, I was just saying, when you compete against people who have been working in the industry, and you kind of seem like fresh out of a completely different environment, but with a certificate.
It's a really good question, mate. So it's down to the network is the first thing, and also it's down to how you can prove experiences. And this is what I was saying. So what is a Scrum Master? Okay, a Scrum Master is there to facilitate a team. It's to help organize a team. It's to help deliver value. It's to help team prioritize stuff. So I've got 23 years experience in that. I've got 23 years experience in facilitating stuff. I've got 23 years experience in how do we get teams talking? How do we overcome impediments? And I can give evidential, examples of it. They don't want someone, for example, the Scrum Master, right? So Agile in its essence, for those who I'm sure you all know, it's a software development. That's where it came. It's software development framework. It came from people who develop software, and then now it's spread into other industries. The reality is it can be used in other space. And if you can prove an evidence and retrospectively fit what you think you cover on your Scrum Master course into your career, you're not leaving the military saying, I've done a 2-day course and I'm sign me up, coach. It's the equivalent of spending 23 years, 24 years, 20 years in the Royal Engineers as a plumber. And then as you leave, you do your Corgi registration. You're not saying, well, your Corgi registration is only a week long and you've only done it recently. You've got 23 years of working in that space. One of the key things is your profile on LinkedIn. One of the key things is building your network. And one of the things I did tell was I knew I wanted to work in the Agile space. So I started building my network with people who were working in the Agile space, Scrum Masters, Agile coaches, Agile delivery leads, looking at organizations that I knew were using Agile ways of working. And I would connect with people in there with a message saying, I'm looking at leaving the military in 3 or 4 years, want to work in this space. And you start the conversation. And what happens is when you have these conversations with people who will give you their time, you start seeing where the qualities are, what you need to work in that space. And it isn't just, oh, you've got a certificate, in you come. It's about that. It's about your profile and your network. When they look at your when they look at your profile on LinkedIn and say, it shows here that you've done a lot of these things we're asking for, we'd like to have a conversation with you about that. One of the things in the Agile space, whether you're a Scrum Master, whether you're an Agile coach, is about the ability to train, the ability to mentor people, the ability to coach people. Well, regardless of your CAP badge and your service, you'll have significant training and experience in delivering training. Significant. When you're put into an interview or you have the opportunity to interview, whether that comes from directly applying or going to one of the events that's laid on, whether it's Forces Transition Group or CTW or any of the other great organizations, your certificates and your CV and the rest of it are nothing other than get you to the interview. And then it's how you perform in your interview. And when they sit there and say, give us an example of when you've had to prioritize important work. Well, I've not worked in the industry, so I've not had the opportunity to prioritize important work. So I'm at 0. Or alternatively, oh, cool. So when I was deployed in Afghanistan and there was an incident and we had 5 casualties, we had to prioritize casualties in order of who was getting treated, who was getting evacuated first. We were this many team, we had this much resource. We had to prioritize on delivering the most value. This was the outcome. So it's about how can you retrospectively fit like the qualities so that you do have the experience. And that's key, is that there is a craft to it, and there are people who are really, really good at it. There's people who are really good at helping you craft your CV to a way of some work into credible stuff in CV Street. There's people on this call. Wayne is exceptional at it. I've got, I can put some names in the chat, connect me on LinkedIn, and I'll point you in the direction of other people who do it really well. And it's not about what I'm going to do is make shit up. It's about, here's my evidence in my career, what I've done pretty well. How does that come across into CV Street? What does that look like?
Yeah, because I think it's like you say, I know I've got all them skills, but if I send my CV in and I'm competing against 100 other people, then they might take one look at it and think, well, he hasn't got any tangible experience in the industry that we're in. But if I know if I got a chance to have a conversation and I could more than prove that I know what I'm doing in that industry. But it's hard when, like you say, you've got your military CV or CVs you've done, and you've got to initiate conversations, but sending a CV in doesn't always achieve that. Whereas I suppose, like what you're saying, LinkedIn and networking seems the only way, in my opinion.
It really is. And in this digital age, mate, I tell you, when I was at Capgemini, I would interview people for jobs. So, and the first thing you do is when they're like, this is the role that's available, it's a Scrum Master, these are the 5 people who are applying for it, or the 10 people who've got through the filter. The first thing you do is go on LinkedIn. The first thing you go on LinkedIn, and if they've got 4 connections and they haven't posted and they've not spoke about their craft and they're not connected to people or in that same group, you kind of think, right, okay. Whereas if you look at my LinkedIn, for example, if you look at the things, it's got my military roles on there. I've not covered it, but I've crafted the wording so that it's, I've worked in delivery. I've worked in delivery and delivering stuff. So as opposed to saying I was a sergeant major of a squadron, I was the delivery lead for a squadron. Okay, and sometimes you think it is wordsmithing, but it's about how can you put that experience in your service into credible lines where people read it and go, this guy has got experience in dealing with people. He's managed 30 people overseas, whether it's even an exercise or an operation, whatever, in Kenya, and he's had to get people from the UK to Kenya, deploy in Kenya for 6 weeks and back. You know, people in Civvy Street haven't got that experience. They might understand a Gantt chart better than you do. They might understand some of the tools better than you do, like the digital software and the tools that they're using to track work. But that should, you know, that's like 5%, 2% of the job. And we can learn that, just like we had to learn JPA, just like we had to learn Excel, just like we had to learn the shit systems that we use in the military. Sorry, John, your hand's up, John.
So I was just going to add one more point on that, John, quick. So Terry, the other thing as well is around building that online influence. So if you look at my posts for the last, I don't know, 18 months, I'll just regurgitate stuff that I've done on courses, but then I'll put my thoughts around that to really try and prove that I know what I'm talking about. So it's not just a CV, it's not just a profile, but it's the content that's posted as well is really important. Because the amount of people you'll start engaging with from that content being posted as well will just open so many doors. And if you can prove that you have the knowledge, the experience, the attitudes, you have the behaviors, you know the values, you understand Agile from a mechanical process as well as everything else, then it's, you know, that's pretty much interview done before you even get in the door. So that's another, it is cumbersome creating content sometimes. Just take your everyday work. Try and apply Kanban or try and apply Agile or Scrum or something into your home life. Wayne does some great stuff that he's doing with his kids and things with Scrum. Create a product backlog for your weekend. Have a chat with your wife about sprint planning tomorrow night about what you're going to do for the weekend. Whatever it might be. Trust, I moved house and we did it in a Scrum format just because I was just feeling a bit geeky about it. But it worked. Nothing got missed. It was successful. Yeah. It cost a lot, but hey, yeah. So that's a good bit of advice, which I'm more than happy to talk about in a bit more detail on our session.
Can I just say one more thing to Terry?
Yeah.
One more thing to Terry. I'll just give you a very recent example, mate. So at MBDA and a lot of other companies, they actively recruit ex-military. So, for example, the last 3 permanent Scrum Masters that they've employed, last 3, okay, 2 of them have been ex-military, direct from the military. The guy, Mark Stevens, who works for me, spent 35 years in the Royal Marines. 35 years in the Royal Marines. He's 50-odd-year-old, okay, employed as a Scrum Master on the highest level, biggest defence project in the history of anything, most expensive, most forward-thinking. The other person, okay, was she's just joined. She spent a full career in the prison service. She's now a Scrum Master in another area of the project. So she's had a full career in doing not Scrum. You don't be a screw in a prison thinking what I'll do is, it's just exactly the same as being a Scrum Master. And they've employed them. And they've employed them because of how they interviewed. They employed them because they could see the qualities, they could see the experience, they could see that they would bring real value to the team. If you just look on LinkedIn and it says Scrum Master and you go to apply for it through Quick Apply or whatever, and it says there's 150 applications, yeah. You're absolutely right. Your CV is going to get AI'd out. It's going to just be filtered out via AI. But if you're reaching out to organizations that actively recruit, and there are some really good events that give you the opportunity to have conversations, don't know where you're settling in the UK, but you've got BAE, actively recruit ex-military, you've got MBDA, there are tons and tons and tons of them who recognize the quality in military, because a lot of their people in the organization are ex-military. So but we think, and it's definitely a thing that we look inwards and think, no one's going to want me. I joined the army at 16. I don't have a degree. I spent my time as a combat medical technician in the Royal Army Medical Corps, and now I want to get a decent job. Who the fuck's going to employ me? I went to school in Rill. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, where the reality is, actually, I had this much experience doing this much stuff.
Yeah.
And people want that.
I think, like, it's just getting the getting yourself in a place where you can have a conversation.
That's it. John, over to you, mate, because I'm sure your hand and your arm's aching from holding it up for that long.
Yeah. Do you know what I'm going to do after this? Bit of sprint planning with the missus, mate, when she comes back from work. Can't wait.
She's going to love it.
I'll bore her to death. Matt, just a quick one. You probably get this quite a lot. Is, how do you measure your effectiveness? And this goes hand in hand with my next role as an Agile coach / Scrum Master. What tangible metric do you have to go, I've achieved this? Because it's kind of, if you're there or if you're not there, you can't say that would have happened, if that makes sense.
It's a really good question, mate. And it's the same with Scrum Masters. It's like, how do you tangibly measure that we deliver things quicker? And was there anything to do I did? So one of the things I do, because I'm a contractor, okay, so the organization has got no requirement of me to perform, hit certain milestones for me to promote. They could say, Matt's no longer delivering, we'll just shit can Matt and we'll get someone else in. So what I like to do is and it's something that you do in the military, but it doesn't do till higher ranks. It's 360-degree reporting. So I ask the main stakeholders, you create, oh, look at the size of that dog. So it's like, I speak to all the stakeholders, and when I talk about stakeholders, it's the people I have touch points with every week. Okay, and it's the same thing. It's like, okay, how have I performed? And it's brutal. It is a brutal way of doing things, because in the military, it's really simple, isn't it? Beginning of the year, you set your objectives, you set a couple of big things you want to do that year, you have your empire, and you say, great. And at the end of the year, you go, great, I'm not eligible for promotion, so fuck it. Or great, do I go to board? Do I not go to board? Now I've promoted, it's amazing, let's do the next thing. When you're in Civvy Street, it isn't the same. There isn't necessarily a pathway to promotion in a lot of these organizations. It just doesn't exist. So it's like, if you, in the NHS, for example, if you want to promote from a band 5 to a band 6, you need to apply for a band 6 job. You could be the best band 5 nurse, best band 5 manager, transformation lead in the whole of the NHS. If you don't apply for a band 6 that comes available, you ain't going to get it. So what happens in the NHS is, if a band 6 or band 7 job comes available and only one person applies for it and they're a shithouse, then they'll get the job. So as a contractor, it's like, how do you try and create that, getting a report to see value? And what I do is I send like 6 or 7 questions, and I send it every quarter, and it's, are you content with where we're at? Is there any areas you need me to improve on? What's the next milestone you want me to help you achieve? And have these transparent conversations. What could I do better? And it's a hideous thing to ask, because if they say, what could you do better? Basically, all of the stuff you're doing, we need you to do that better. But it's about how you can sit there and say, certainly as an Agile coach, because the difference on a project manager and a Scrum Master, or a difference on a project manager and an Agile coach, is a project manager, you're like, these are your milestones. This is your budget. This is your scope. These are the things you have to achieve on these days. And if you don't, you're failing. As an Agile coach, you don't have ownership of it. Scrum Master, you don't have ownership. It's a flatter structure, so you're responsible for the team. So if the team succeed, then you succeed. And as for me, it's asking the people. It's asking the people I'm working with, am I doing enough? What do you want more from me? And that links into something that I've seen Jake put on LinkedIn ages and ages ago, which is, you could sit there and ask that question. They say, what we need from you, Matt, is we need you to start working be online from 6 in the morning. And we need you to start working longer hours or being in the office more. Well, again, that doesn't fit with me, you know? So I've got to have red lines. I've got to have things that I'm not prepared to do and I'm not willing to do. And also, I've got to have the confidence to be able to say, I can't help you with that. There's nothing I can do to help you with that, because that's a culture thing. That's a structure thing. That's an org thing that you need to address. It's a really good question, and I don't even think I've answered it properly. But I think one of the things is, if people are inviting you to the table to have conversations, if people are involving you in the process, involving your discussion, and valuing your opinion on things, I would say that's a success.
Yeah, and the extend your contract's always a good one, isn't it?
100%. And if you extend your contract till March 25, then yeah, winner, chicken dinner, mate. Yeah.
It just goes hand in hand, because my next role was Agile delivery manager in Home Office. So I'm
Amazing.
working in civil service. So, you know, they're not the fastest, are they? And only week 1 at the minute. So we'll see how it progresses.
It's a really interesting one, mate. And I can connect you to a guy called Pete Worrell. So Pete Worrell is a Agile delivery lead, and he's with HMRC, mate. So similar, do you know what I mean? Similar archaic organization, but he's been there about 7 years, and it's working in the civil service space, which I guess isn't creative and innovative, but it can be at a level that the stuff you're working on, if you know what I mean. And he's been there for about 7 years, mate. So it would be an interesting connection, mate.
Yeah, and the role itself is a brand new role, so it's almost a blank canvas for me. And you know, you're on about with Terry, about certifications. I've not done the Scrum Master course, but I'm going to be a Scrum Master. But I know enough about it and all the years of experience to just crack on with it.
I think there's two things that for people who are interested in working in Scrum, okay, and if you've never heard of the role of Scrum Master, or it's something you've not really considered or thought about, so you're right. The certificate tells you how to do things. It doesn't really. What the certificate does is tells you what it is you would be doing. One of the bits of advice I would give you is, and they're all free, is learn the tools. Okay, learn the tools that we don't learn, because it's things like the Atlassian suite of tools that they use, like Jira and things like that. Because although it's not your job, and it's not your job at all just to be their data input guy in Jira, but you've got to understand the tool, so how you can get some stuff out of it. And that's something that the course will never teach you. No course in the history of Scrum Master courses will say, and here's our Jira section of how you do Jira. You've got to be a self-learned thing. One of the things with the Scrum Master course, I would say, and it's a bit controversial for the group, is I would do my Scrum Master course with a civilian provider who doesn't just deliver it to military. And the reason I would do that is, and again, it's controversial, I'm happy to take fights on it, is that you go on the course then with 15, 20 people who are all doing the job as civvies, mate. My concern sometimes with doing the Scrum Master course through some of the other organizations is you're on there with loads of guys and girls who are leaving to be a Scrum Master to get the certificate, but you can't really speak about how have you applied that in, Cambridge University Press. How have you really applied that within HSBC? What are your challenges? Whereas if you're the only MOD or the pocket of a small MOD people with a civilian provider, you've got that building of a network of people doing it. So you can sort of go, oh, I get it. Oh, this is how I would deal with that from your sense. And you can almost like validate your thought process. But yeah.
No, that's good. Some really good questions there. And John referenced the Atlassian Jira suite. I've just put a link to the Learn Linktree for the Agile O group. The link's on there to take you to Atlassian University. The Jira fundamentals is about 45 minutes to an hour long. But again, like Matt said, being able to use those tools effectively then allows you to then do a better job of delivery, because you're not focusing on trying to learn something new. You just get into the job and know the people. We've got about 3 minutes left, and I haven't got through all my questions, so you guys have answered asked some really good questions, some great conversations. One last question, if you can do it in 3 minutes, Matt. What's next on the cards for you?
That's a really good question. So one of the things that I guess I want to move into, or I want to do is I love running events, right? So there's something that Wayne and I are working on currently, and it's to basically have like a face-to-face, almost like a meetup, so we can, talk about things, agile things, business agility. Agile, if you just go online on LinkedIn and put in Agile, what you'll get is like a war of people who have got an opinion on it. It falls into basically a thing of business agility. And one of the things I like the idea of is pulling people together to have those open discussions, to have a chat about it, to talk through challenges that we've got. I'm currently based in Gloucestershire, in between Gloucester and Cheltenham, and there's quite a big Agile community in and around this space. And there's also Bristol, which is full of big organisations that use Agile ways of working, as well as Cheltenham, and as well as in between, like there's a bit of a business site here, which a lot of it's in the avionics space. And I want to pull some of those people together to have those conversations and see how it goes. I don't know what's next, but at the moment I'm still learning my craft. I feel imposter syndrome probably on a weekly basis, where I think, what the fuck am I doing here? And I've been doing it for 3.5 years, and I still think someone's going to find me out. I'm going to get found out. I'm going to go to work one day and people are going to be like, you're just talking a lot of shit. But thankfully it hasn't happened so far. So yeah. So that's it, mate. Is linking in with fellow veterans and also fellow people who work in the industry and trying to learn as much as I can.
That's good. Hopefully we can help with that journey as well, because business agility is where it's all going to be pushing towards, I think. So that's really useful to know. Okay. I just want
to say one more thing, by the way, mate, and that's the thing that it's an elephant in the room people don't talk about, and that's salaries. So just as a ballpark, if you are looking at a Scrum Master role, okay, you're talking as a perm, you're talking between 50 and 60k a year. And that's a permanent with an organization. Okay, that's the space you're looking at. And if it's less than that, or if you go into an organization and they try and weaponize your pension, so with your pension, you'll be on this much, I would steer away from them. But it's mental to think, and it links to you, Terry, thinking 2-day qual, and I can get essentially, if things join up, I can get a job on between 50 and 60k a year. It sounds crazy, but if you're a good Scrum Master, you're going to bring so much value to an organization. And us in the people who are ex-military know how to get people working together. We know how to conflict resolution at the lowest level. We know how to get teams on the same page. We know the importance of groupthink and that high performance, and you'll be worth every penny. So don't think that the opportunities aren't out there, because they are.
Yeah.
Awesome. Great point to end on. We'll leave it there for now. Again, trying to keep to that time box of an hour. Some great practical experience there. So really appreciate your insights there, Matt. Some really useful, valuable advice. Hopefully you guys that have attended will gain huge amounts from that. But again, it doesn't just end here at the end of the guest session. We're all within the Agile, the community of practice for the Agile O group. So anytime you've got any questions, queries, whatever it might be, just reach out. John, you can vouch for that. We've met up quite a few times. We've had a few chats online over the time of your resettlement. I think you probably had online chats with Wayne and Matt as well throughout that time. We are here to share the knowledge, share the experiences that we've gone through. So that's mainly to Sam and Terry, because you're the new ones to the group. So welcome, and let's see how this journey goes. But we'll close it off there for the recording. And yeah, we'll either see you guys in the group, or we'll see you on the virtual coffee chats coming up. Thanks so much for your time.